Let us pray. What we are not, make us. What we have not, give us. What we know not, teach us in the name of God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, who is, who was, and who is to come. Amen.
Shall we try this one? How's about I just hold this? Is it long enough? I don't want you to miss this story. Every word is precious. Okay. I walked into my very first Coventry Choir rehearsal on the third Thursday of February 1983. The choir had been asked to come half an hour early for a discussion led by the rector, George Regas, with his executive assistant, Ann Peterson, and the one female priest on staff, Franny Hall. The conversation engaged a controversy in the choir over a change in the text of a Rachmaninoff anthem from "Blessed is the man" to "Blessed is the one." It was a wonderfully strange yet illuminating discussion about the power of language, open-mindedness, resistance to change, and inclusion. Observing the proceedings from a seat off to the side of the choir room, I thought, what have I gotten myself into? And I've asked that question in one form or another every day for the past 34 years. And I've rejoiced in that question. For this is my first reflection for you as I leave this community. Expect to grow. Expect to have your mind challenged. Expect to have your heart expanded. Cherish that dynamic openness to exploring faith together that is the heartbeat of All Saints Church, where we can search for truth and find our way to God in differing ways, struggle with and embrace our differences, sing each other's songs, and come to the altar rail together week after week. Expect to grow. Reflection number 2 from the basement. Wisdom from the book of Ephesians. As beloved children, live in love. Choosing to love is a courageous act. I pray every day that I will find the courage to make my life a blessing, to live in love. This begins with the difficult task of accepting my own beloved nature, and I believe that we need the help of community in affirming that belovedness. Another story from my early years at All Saints. Right before my 29th birthday, I summoned the courage to come out to my family because living as a closeted gay man had become unbearable. That empowering act was also profoundly painful, as that news was not wholeheartedly embraced by my family, and we struggled for several years ultimately to a wonderfully joyous and healthy place. Thanks be to God. But that Christmas of 1985, I was in a pretty bad place. And I remember running into George Regas after the 4 p.m. family service. He had some sense of my struggles and could certainly read it on my face that night. And I will never forget George pointing his finger at me and telling me in the most commanding manner, "Jim, you are a loved man, and you had better believe that." I was upheld and strengthened throughout that journey and many others over the years by this community. Remind each other of our beloved nature often and with great conviction. You are loved, and you had better believe that. You are loved, and you had better believe that. You are loved, and you had better believe that. And you are loved, and you had better believe that. To your very core, accept the blessedness of being a beloved child of God, and through that, find the courage to make your life a blessing. Live in love.
As James settled into the basement, pastoral care was on the move. In fact, we moved 7 times in 14 years. We occupied 4 of the 8 offices upstairs in the office building before relocating to Scott Hall. One fall Sunday morning, I arrived to a flooded office facilitating yet other moves, which ultimately ended with pastoral care in the trailer. Now, we didn't move because we didn't want you to find us. The moves were always motivated by confidentiality and accessibility. How could we be pastoral care if you couldn't come to the office? We felt the moves were grateful because we learned from each move. So as James stated in the beginning, with your help, we have learned a few things. Therefore, this morning, we are sharing our wisdom from the basement and the trailer. The primary learning from the trailer is, no matter where you are, what matters is how you care. James already talked about expecting to grow as you live in love. And I say to you, to live in love, you must care for one another. In the Message Bible version of the Beatitudes, verse 7 states, you are blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, F-U-L-L, you find yourselves cared for. My friends, that's the beginning of living in love. Being careful requires us to be present to and for one another. Please know, though, that caring is not easy. However, it is one of the most precious gifts you can give to one another. I recently attended a memorial service where Maggie Cunningham, a former member of our clergy, preached the following: Christianity is a call to compassion. In the earliest days of the Christian community, pagan witnesses would marvel about the Christians and say, see how they love each other. She shared that giving of one's essence is the highest form of charity. However, isn't giving of one's essence the difficulty many of us face today? Sometimes we have been forced to act in ways that aren't compassionate in order to close the deal or make a deadline. And for a host of other reasons, people are often sacrificed because of their skin color or culture. How often have you heard someone say, that's just the nature of war, or the nature of the economic system, or the nature of things, or why are you so critical? That's life. My friends, Jesus is saying to us, there is another way. Jesus is saying to be compassionate doesn't often make economic or life sense. Yet, that's the way love, care, and loving works. Love doesn't make sense. There are several ways you may choose to love or care. We may choose to show through touch. Most of you will give a handshake. I say, I give hugs. I want you to take that on. Giving hugs. It's a great way to be in touch with another human being. We often do it through a smile or a simple greeting. Always we do it through prayer. Showing compassion is like preaching the gospel. Now, St. Francis says, preach the gospel. Use words if necessary. Choosing to care is something we must always do. Remember Christ's commandment to love one another, God, and to love God first, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So I hope you are asking or thinking, can I step aside and outside of my comfort zone and care or show compassion? Can I become a Christ-like presence in the lives of others, to strive for peace and justice? Once again, it will not be easy. There have been times when God sent people to me who have hurt me or hurt others, and my natural inclination was to turn my back. However, God would always whisper in my ear, I'm here with you, and remind me to be God's presence. One of my colleagues once wrote, there are times when I want to turn away, to ignore, to forget certain people. I want to be angry at certain people and groups of people and feel righteous with my anger. I suspect that's the same for many of you as well. I know there are people out there who do not act as they are or should be neighbors, or neighbors to you or anyone else. People who do not show love to you, to me or anyone, or anything that we care for. Unfortunately, that is sometimes the way of the world around us. But I want you to know that we are not called to be like the world. We are called to be Christ-like within the world. When we are born of the Spirit into Christ, we are called to live differently. We are called to think differently. We are called to do differently. We are called to be neighbors to those who do not act as though they're our neighbors, who do not act as though they love us and necessarily want to be around us. We are called to give to others who may not ever give back to us. God knows it will not be easy. In verse 8 of the Beatitudes of the Messenger, it states, you are blessed when you get your inside world, which is your mind and your heart, put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. That will require you to be and do many things. Most of all, it will require you to focus, keep perspective, and have gratitude.
It is hard work that we do here. When we're at our best, all saints, we're doing work that engages life at its deepest places. And literally, lives are at stake. You know that. And it is so easy to become distracted and to lose sight of what is truly important. Over these 34 years, I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of staff colleagues, building and grounds personnel, priests, administrative assistants, musicians, and program directors, all of whom have touched my life in some way with their unique gifts. Some were more fun to work with than others. And while I have taken our work here very seriously, I have found it invaluable to keep a sense of humor and to laugh often. Many colleagues have asked me directly how I have managed to keep a positive attitude after many years of working in the church. As any institution has its foibles, bureaucratic annoyances, personality conflicts, and other challenges. There are many answers to that inquiry about keeping positive, including the foundation of prayer and the incredible life-saving gift of making music. But also central to this has been keeping my perspective. As issues arise, to simply stop and ask the question, is this really important? Yes, dealing with issues as they arise, but not getting stuck on them. And that also takes some courage. One of the most wonderful aspects of my 21 years of close working relationship with Ed Bacon was his encouragement of my growth in finding my voice of disagreement and learning the tools to communicate about those disagreements effectively, and receiving constructive critique without taking it personally. Keeping perspective, keeping the eye on what is truly important, dealing with issues that need to be addressed, but not getting distracted by relatively minor frustrations. Keep perspective. The fourth and final reflection from the basement: express gratitude. It doesn't take anything away from our being to be thankful. In fact, living a life focused in gratitude expands the heart. Kindness seems to be in short supply in our society these days. Don't miss opportunities to express appreciation. So allow me to express some gratitude in this moment. I am deeply grateful to you, the All Saints congregation, for your love and encouragement over these 34 years. I have been with you in your most joy-filled celebrations and in times of your profound grief. And I am honored to have shared in all of those moments with you. Together we have worshiped God with joy, with reverence, with boisterous color, and with solemn reflection. And we have been faithful vessels of new life created through justice, inclusion, love, peace, and reconciliation, all with much laughter and many tears in community. I am deeply grateful to the choirs, children, youth, and adults, working every week with our two magnificent choirs, working with Coventry Choir and with Canterbury Choir every Wednesday and Thursday, has been my greatest joy. These wonderful and often wacky saints volunteer an average of 7 hours every week, not including driving time from Fontana and Riverside, from San Juan Capistrano and Yorba Linda, from Moore Park and Valencia, from Culver City, West Hollywood, and yes, Pasadena. Their dedication and talent has been a constant inspiration as they have energetically led our worship with great variety, color, and reverence. The growth of both choirs over the years in excellence, faith, mission, and community has been the source of the greatest inspiration and hope. I am honored to have worked with 3 outstanding rectors, and I am particularly grateful in this moment for Mike Kinman, from whom I have learned so much in just these 8 months. You have been so gracious and pastoral in this moment of transition into my next chapter, and I thank you. And to the countless staff colleagues during my tenure, I'm deeply grateful for all that collegial talent so freely shared, which made each day of work an experience of growth for me. And what about you, Zelda?
Well, James, I haven't been here as long as you. However, I echo the words of gratitude you've shared. I, too, am deeply grateful for this community. I, too, am deeply grateful for all of the volunteers who make the pastoral care program what it is. And perhaps I should start at the very beginning. When I was being interviewed for this position 14 years ago, there were 2 people who started that journey with me. And I ask you to please stand so that we can see who you are. You may elect to remain standing or not, but please stand. And they are Greg Adams and Blaine Kavanaugh. Now, Blaine was at the 9 o'clock service, and I know that Greg Adams is here. Remain standing, please. Aren't you glad you made that decision? Yes. And starting from the beginning, there are others. I want to share with you some other volunteers who were with me at the very beginning. And they are Karen Alexander, Hilda Bower, Judith Fisher, Grace and Steve Galton, Carolyn Garner-Reagan, Richard Harvey, Tony Larson, Alma Stokes, and Ken Vanderhorst. Now, Ken left our community to go to Virginia to be with his family, but he was with me on every step of the journey. On Saturdays when I sat in my office, the person who sat in that office with me was Ken. So Ken, I'm deeply grateful to you. There are others, and these are the many volunteers that make pastoral care, healing, and health, and the music effective programs here at All Saints. So as I call you a ministry, I ask you to please stand and remain standing. Accessibility. Accessibility is responsible for having people in wheelchairs or walkers find a place to sit in this church, often to sit in the front so that they can see what's going on. So please stand if you are part of the accessibility ministry. Our prayer ministries has people coming in on Mondays and Saturdays. They come in on Mondays to send out cards. They come in on Saturdays to call you in response to your prayer requests. So for our prayer ministry, please stand. It is there that we generate the following ministries: grief and loss. Often when someone in the community has died and we've done their memorial service, the grief and loss ministry facilitators are there to welcome them into a group so that they can share that grief with others. Sometimes they don't want to do that. And that's when our lay counseling ministry step into effect. It's a one-on-one ministry where you can talk to someone one-to-one. And that person who you're talking to listens mostly. They're attached to a therapist so that if they run into difficulty, the therapist is there to help them process whatever that difficulty is. So please stand. Steve and Grace, I see you sitting. You're supposed to be standing. Thank you very much. Everyone who's been in that ministry, past and present, I would love for you to stand so that the community can see who you are. The prayer ministry also generates lay visitation. Now, some of you have received prayer shawls in this community, and those prayer shawls are knitted and crocheted by members of the prayer shawl ministry. In the years that I have been here, we have sent out over 600 prayer shawls, which means that they've been working very hard. So if you're part of the prayer shawl ministry, please stand. And finally, we have our lay visitors. I need for you to remain standing for a reason. So if you can remain standing, I would really appreciate it. And our last ministry is the lay visitation, well, not quite last, the lay visitation ministry. You've seen them come up with the black boxes. Those boxes contain the elements that we consecrate for them to go out and give communion to those persons who are unable to come to All Saints. And they are so grateful that someone walks into their room or their space to give them communion. It's an extension of what we do here. So our lay visitation ministers, please stand. We have developed a new ministry in pastoral care. It's called Healing and Health. And the Healing and Health ministers, you will find in the baptistry and in the chapel laying on hands for you, saying prayers with you. They also have a healing ministry where if you come to them, make an appointment to come to them, they will lay hands on you personally. Will the Healing and Health ministers please stand? And finally, all who have been a part of the music ministry, children and youth choirs, adult choirs, summer, instrumentalists, and music office volunteers, we ask you to please stand. I know some of you are shy, however, it's okay. We know who you are. Now, I want you to take a look around you. This is pastoral care, healing, and health and music. As you can see, James and I are leaving. However, we are leaving you in capable hands because these volunteers remain and will continue those programs and ministries in the same amazing ways that they do now. So you've already given them an applause, but I ask you to please applaud them again.
We've got a big finale here. All Saints has been my home for most of my life.
And I've grown up here. I've been ordained for 17 years, and 14 of those have been with All Saints. James and I will always hold this extraordinary church in our hearts and in our prayers.
We are already thrilled with the new chapter that All Saints Church has begun.
We thank you for that, Mike. We thank you for saying yes to us. And we know that God has great things in store for this faith community.
We wish you all God's blessings and joy in the coming years
ahead.
Amen.
Amen.